way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.
Join CJEC, ETM Media Group, ARCC NorCal, and SAC Black Biz for the BYOB Community Reparations Listening Session Saturday, August 27th, 2 p.m. at Capsity Oak Park in Sacramento, corner of MLK and Broadway.
The Build Black Better informational discussion will focus on the needs of small black business owners in the Sacramento region.
What types of reparations proposals would help create a thriving black business community?
Come share your thoughts, your ideas, your story, learn more, and let your voice be heard.
Okay. Thank you all for joining. I'm Chris Lodgson. I am one of the lead organizers with the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. We are one of the 7 community anchor organizations selected by the California Reparations Task Force and Commission to do community outreach and community engagement and raise California reparations. I am so glad to see all of you here today. I want to give you a special thank you for being here, and also want to give a special thank you to ETM Media for live streaming this right now on YouTube, and give a big shout out to the entire YouTube audience who is watching live right now. Also want to give a shout out to California Black Media for being here today, as well as our amazing partners, our coalition partners at the American Redress Coalition of California, or ARCC, Sacramento and Bay Area team. First of all, please put your hands together for yourselves for being here today. Yes, on a Saturday. Thank you very much. I'm really, really proud of this work today. This is actually, and I was saying this to somebody as we were getting started here, this is our 3rd community listening session this week. Okay, this is our 3rd community listening session this week, and I am just so proud to be a part of the history. It's probably our 7th or 8th community listening session officially since, I want to say, May, really. So we've done a lot of work for community outreach and community listening for California reparations just since the month of May. But we've been doing this work, reaching out, building awareness around California reparations over a year, over 2 years now. We got started in California reparations work back in 2019, 2018, late 2018, early 2019, when California first started to explore the idea of reparations in the state of California. And then we started talking to our legislators back then about California reparations. We actually helped write the final version of the California Reparations Task Force bill, also known as AB 3121, which was signed into law by California Governor Gavin Newsom in 2020. And we have been doing work since then to make sure that people know about and are part of the California reparations process. So I want to thank you for being here. Also want to thank you for being a part of the Build Black Better Business meeting, part of this event too. We are very, very lucky to be talking about Black business and Black entrepreneurship and the things that's going on here in the Sacramento community. So you are in for a treat today because you got both focus on what's going on in the Black business community, what can happen for the Black business community here in Sacramento, not just here in Oak Park, but in the Del Paso Boulevard area. And also, we really here to hear from you about what you want California reparations to look like. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host here, Kim, for some assistance with the introduction here, and then we're going to get right into the program. Thank you for being so patient, by the way, and sticking in there while we got started. So, Kim, come on in.
Thanks, Chris. You know, I'm actually up. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's
give him a round of applause, and I'll just present from my little station over here, pulling double duty, getting the stream out on YouTube. We are live on YouTube. You saw some of the videos we were playing beforehand. One was showing the Del Paso sister Capacity facility that we want to talk to you guys about today. And we also want to talk to business owners and operators because, like Chris said, we are moving forward with our reparations proposal, the law that's been in. Right now, the task force is in the development stage, and we want to hear from the community about what reparations proposals could look like. And the reason for this meeting today is we want to know what those reparations proposals will look like in terms of the business community. What will help the business community thrive? So that's what we want to hear from you today about. Before we do that, let's learn a little about what exactly is a small business. What determines a small business versus a large business? The U.S. Business Administration operates in accordance with the public law called the Small Business Act, SBA, to help protect the hundreds of small businesses, strengthen the economy, and preserve the enterprise. The SBA, the SBA states that small business is an entity that is not dominant in its industry and has independent owners. The size of a business matters because different laws apply to large businesses, and size helps determine a company's eligibility for federal programs and contracts. So basically, a small business is any business that employs under 500 people. So I think that puts a lot of the businesses that we run, at least here in Sacramento, in that category. Another slide we have here states that nationally, as one of the latest census data released, there were 3.12 million Black-owned businesses in the United States, generating $206 billion in annual revenue and supporting 3.5 million U.S. jobs. So there are quite a few businesses, but they are small businesses, most of which are in the non-employer firms category, which means that they don't have any actual employees. All right. Another challenge that we've been having with small business with COVID situation that just happened here not too long ago. While PPP loans, it was a systemic policy failures kept pandemic aid from reaching Black businesses, while PPP loans via the U.S. 2020 CARES Act were an important economic cushion. Key flaws meant that the program was largely regressive and not targeted to the firms with the greatest need, particularly in communities of color. One paper estimated that only 23 of 34% of the PPP dollars went directly to workers who would otherwise have lost jobs, while the balance flowed to business owners, shareholders, including creditors and suppliers of PPP firms receiving loans. So basically, all that PPP funding didn't necessarily get to the businesses. One of the reasons was it was based on the amount of employees that a certain business had. So what I just read to you, that most of the Black businesses don't have employees, so that means that you were not qualified for those PPP loans. So that's one thing that they need to consider when they're putting that type of policy together. And there were lots of hardships with Black businesses during the PPP loans. 92% of Black businesses expressed that they experienced hardship during COVID versus 79% of white businesses. So that's just a little overview on the state of business and the PPP challenges that we went through. So we want to put our heads together today, come up with some ideas on what reparations proposals could look like, even in government contracting. There are government contract portals that you can sign up looking for funding. So we just here to kind of generate some new ideas. And with that, I will pass it to,
Sorry, just real quick. This is Umoy here. I'm in the Mass Media Group. Since we have the calprocure.ca.gov up there, I just wanted to mention this real quick. Actually, I'm in the Mass Media Group. We're actually signed up with CalProcure. So if you are a business here in Sacramento or in California as well, I do highly suggest that you go onto this website and look at this, because they actually give contracts out to small businesses as well. So I just want to mention that. Thanks.
Thanks for mentioning that, Umoya. You actually jogged my memory. There was a contract that even the mass media was interested in going after on CalProcure. It was a with the DMV. They were looking for streaming services, but one of the criteria to qualify for that job would be you needed to have a media center that you had access to during the duration of the contract, which we did not. So that was a barrier to us even being able to apply for the contract. And with what we're trying to do at the Del Paso Heights Resource Center, one of the amenities that we want to include there would be a digital media center. So that would have given us the space to be able to go after the contract. So one of the challenges in even being able to apply for these contracts is having the resources to be able to fulfill the bid. So that's what we're trying to do in generating a resource center in order to add those types of amenities. Like I said, what I would like to see go into that space is a digital media center. Right now, especially with our reparations movement that we have going on, it's more important than ever for us to tell our stories and to testify. So this media center could also be a place where we bring in the community so they can testify and tell their story. It could also be a place where small businesses could come to create advertisements for their business. We could use interns to help create some of that work, like our wonderful intern that we have in the back here. Everybody say hi to Yashar. But it creates a workforce training environment for young people, and it creates a space where we can also conduct work. So with that, I would like to introduce the owner and operator of this facility, Cap City Facility Oak Park, which it would be the sister facility to Cap City out in Del Paso Heights, and that's the building that we're trying to activate currently. Come on up, Dimitri Goudame. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm a pacer here. Everybody knows that on my team here, or on our team. Hey there, folks. My name is Dimitri Goudame, and I'm the CEO of Cap City Co-working. As you notice here, we're sitting in a facility here, and really the stuff that I'd like to speak to is just when it comes to business, and especially business in the North Sac area, it's tough, right? From a small business background, I've got 10, 15 years or so in this, and one of the things that I'd love for this conversation to include in it is when you incorporate co-working, it's really truly a combination of local on-the-ground businesses. And in the business world, we need every advantage that we can. And one of the things that we preach with Cap City is we want to lower the barriers of access to a whole lot of different things. And typically, most businesses, they need access to your standard, legal, banking, financial, marketing, production type of services. And so what we'd like to do, or what we're going to endeavor to do on the inside of our building, is do that. Is actually create an environment where we can have a number of micro enterprises or micro businesses sourced specifically from the North Sac community, all individual operators or small group operators, and tie it into the master development plan of what we hope to seek out there. Johnny on our team is going to speak a lot to what we're going to do with the lot activation. It's going to be primarily a food-focused design, low barriers. So anybody who's seeking a business opportunity in the food world, we'd love to see you join us for the ride. Johnny, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, and speaking of food, Cap City Inc. also is the owner and operator of Buffalo Pizza. I don't know if you've had a chance to head to the back table there. If you'd like to sample some of the pizza offerings, that also comes from this organization.
First, I want to thank everybody for showing up today. Give yourself a hand. This is how things get built and get developed. So most of you, I'm assuming, are familiar with the North Sacramento area, especially our particular property. We have one of the largest pieces of property along that corridor, Del Paso Boulevard. We call it the lot because it has the biggest lot. It's a little bit over 1 acre, like 1.04 acres just on the lot itself. And then we have a 3-story building, which used to be the old Bank of America building. So we're looking to do some innovative things out there at that piece of property. Cap City Del Paso, as we call it, or the lot. It's known by many things. Also 1830 is the address as well. We're looking to activate the parking lot. That's something that we can do immediately by putting on certain type of events. One of the events that we've already done, and we had a great response from the other businesses along the corridor, was a lowrider event. As you know, that the city of Sacramento kind of removed all those restrictions, and we were able to kind of team up with one of the local lowrider clubs that kind of fell in our lap. We took advantage of that, and we had a great turnout. Moving forward, there's several events that we have scheduled for the calendar year for 2022. One which would be October the 10th, and I wish you guys would consider that, put that on your calendar. It's called the Taco Festival. We're going to be working with the Perez family who manage and run that operation, their organization. And we're going to we took it from the street and put it on our lot. And, that's kind of a big deal for us. And it also really works well for that particular organization because it kind of puts a lot of money back into their coffers that they didn't have to spend, paying those additional fees. Then we have another couple lowrider events, and I'm looking to reach out to Dion Taylor, who's a local filmmaker here in Sacramento, California, who's now living in Hollywood, doing some big projects out there. But he has this event called 500 Dinners for 500 Families in December, typically the month of December. We can get them to partner up with us. I think that would be a really great event for the community because it typically is a free event where we actually give away turkeys and all the items that go with making a good meal, and that's a good organization. Plus, Dion brings in some celebrities too that makes it really fun and entertaining. So those are the immediate things that we have. Next year, we're looking to put at least 15 to 16 events just there in the parking lot that I'm aware of. And then, of course, we're going to be activating the interior part. And I think that's what Kim spoke about and Dimitri spoke about, the resource center and things of that nature. But that's a process, that's a build out, but we're definitely working hard at it to get it there. So we're hoping that everyone here have a chance to get involved with us, be a part of the excitement, tell your friends, share the information, whether it be through our, I've actually created a Facebook page, and I'm looking around. Most people probably here use Facebook like me, so probably from that old school, right? And the actual Facebook address is The Lot at 1830 Del Paso Boulevard. It's really simple. And you can follow us there. We'll keep you informed of what's going on. Of course, if you know Kim, or if you know Chris, they'll be able to also keep you informed of what's going on. So that's all I really have to share with you guys. But if you guys have any questions, I'm willing to take any of them. Well, give yourself a hand then.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Oh, thanks. So I guess next on the agenda, and actually, before we go on to the next portion of the agenda, the space that we're speaking about, we want to hear from the community too. So you've heard about some of the ideas that we've been kicking around to get out into that facility to use as a resource for the community, business community to use as resources. But we want to hear from the business community. What would you like to see in a resource center? What would help you help your business grow? So please, when we listen to have the listening portion of our meeting today, please let us know what you'd like to see, even if it's wish list stuff. We want to hear about it. And with that, I will introduce my comrade Chris, bring him back up to give us some reparations overviews.
Okay, dope stuff. So I'm gonna get up actually. I feel so good. You know why? Because, like I said, this is our third event this week, and this is actually one of the events where I have extra help for this event. I've had so much, for the events that we did earlier in the week, I've had to moderate the events from start to finish. So it actually feels good to be able to sit down, listen, and be actually a part of the event, just like you. So I'm feeling really good, and I'm actually going to share some information with you about California reparations, and then we're going to start to hear from you. We'll take any questions that you have also. I think we're also very blessed to be joined by one of the members of the California Reparations Task Force as well, virtually today here too. So you'll be able to talk directly to a task force member. If I'm not mistaken, my folks will correct me. But before we even get into any of that, I usually start this off in this way. So I want everybody to pause for a second. All right? Stop what you're doing, stop where you are. And I want to say this, that every single one of us right now, I'm stepping in and out of the camera, but they're going to have to get me. Every single one of us, every single one of you right now is sitting inside of a history book, okay? They're going to be writing, they're going to be reading, they're going to be talking about the things that you did and we did in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. And that is because of two things. First, because California is the first state in the nation to create a task force to study and develop reparations proposals. So put your hands together for that. Thank you. And secondly, because California will be the first state to actually do reparations. And that is something that we will have not seen. And I always feel lucky, I always feel honored, and I always feel humbled to be a part of this right now at this time. So I want to start there just to give you an idea of where you are in history right now. This is real. Okay. So I'm gonna ask my folks to pull up some of the information that I got, just to share just a basic overview of California reparations. And we'll talk about the California Reparations Task Force, and then we'll talk about what we mean by the word reparations. So if you could pull that slide up, fam, please, so that people can see what I'm talking about. Thank you much. So in the year 2020, I think I mentioned this. Well, let's actually start with the word reparations, right? Because we're going to say the word reparations a lot today. I've said it a few times already. It's been mentioned by Kim. But what do we mean when we say the word reparations? What do we mean? By the way, everything you're going to see today is on our website, CJECofficial.org. So definitely watch and listen to what we're saying. And if you miss anything, if you want to follow up on anything, go to CJECofficial.org. But what are reparations? What do we mean when we talk about reparations? Specifically, when we're talking about it here today, and when we're talking about it in the context of the California Reparations Task Force's work, and I'll explain more about that task force in a minute or two, we are talking about corrective, substantive, so meaningful actions taken by a government to make right a wrong done, usually by paying money and doing other things to help the people who have been harmed and wronged. So corrective, substantive, meaningful, I would even use the word tangible actions taken by a government to correct something that the government did wrong. A government did a people wrong, did a group wrong. The government profited off that wrong. The government made itself successful because of that wrong. The government has a responsibility to make right that wrong. For who? Reparations for who? I'm gonna come back to that. But before I move on, in the work that we're doing here in California, when we talk about reparations, the California Reparations Task Force by law has to create reparations in 5 forms. So according to the California Reparations Task Force's job, the task force has to create reparations plans that agree with the internationally accepted forms of reparations. And in that internationally accepted form, there are 5 things inside of reparations. So there's compensation, there's restitution, go back one slide, please. There's rehabilitation, there's satisfaction, and then there's guarantees of non-repetition. So compensation plus restitution plus rehabilitation plus satisfaction plus guarantees of non-repetition equals reparations. Go to the first slide that I was on, fam. Yeah, go back. Get to there. There you go. There you go. Perfect. So,
yeah, that's
okay. No worries. No worries. Yeah, just stay right here. We good. We good. Thank you. So, when we say the word reparations, we talking about corrective, substantive, meaningful, tangible actions taken by a government to fix something that is did wrong in the form of compensation, restitution, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. Compensation, that's the most easiest to understand, all right? That's the money, that's the financial, that's the economic part, that's the wealth part, that's the cash money income part. If you ask me, and I say this a lot, if it don't have compensation, it ain't reparations. Okay? If it don't have compensation, it ain't reparations. Our people work for free for 250, 60 years, didn't get paid a dime. We owe some compensation financially for that. Restitution. Usually when we talk about restitution, we're talking about either the return of land, the return of property that was taken, or the return of opportunity for land and property that was denied. Rehabilitation. We're talking about some of the non-financial, non-economic forms. This could be things like not having to pay for school, not having to pay for no health care, things like that. Satisfaction. These are what you might think of as the more symbolic forms of reparations. So these could include, for example, changing the textbooks to make sure that the history is told right, a formal apology on paper, removing racist landmarks, things like that. Guarantees of non-repetition. These are things that you might think of as the protections. So what do we need to do to protect the people who are owed reparations so that what happened before doesn't happen again? These could be changes to policy, changes to laws, changes to, oh, that was for him, okay. Changes to policy, changes to laws, et cetera. But I think of these as more of the protections. Reparations for who? Who are we talking about? Who is California talking about when it's talking about reparations? So, according to the California Reparations Task Force itself, reparations in the state of California are for African Americans who are descendants of persons who were enslaved in the United States, and those who are the descendants of who you might think of as or who we call the free blacks, who were in the United States before 1900. So here in the United States, here in California, some of our people freed themselves. Some of our people freed themselves early. So we have the descendants of the free blacks and also the descendants of those who were enslaved or who were emancipated during the Emancipation Proclamation Civil War period by the President Lincoln at that time. So that's who reparations is for, according to the California Reparations Task Force. Reparations for what, though? Why reparations? For what? Generally, when the California Reparations Task Force is talking about reparations, we're talking about three time periods. The period of slavery or enslavement, so the period when the country was founded to the middle 1800s, to the Civil War. Then the period after that, what we call the Jim Crow or the Jane Crow era. So the middle 1800s to the middle 1860s to middle 1960s, 1970s. And then the period of now. So from then till now, whatever you want to call this, whatever you call this period now. So that's three time periods, three eras that reparations is meant to be for here in the state of California. If you go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the California Reparations Task Force itself. So I mentioned in my intro, my opening, in 2020, the governor of California, who is Gavin Newsom now, signed into law the country's first reparations task force bill. And that bill created California's and the nation's first ever reparations task force. The bill itself was written by then Assembly member, now Secretary Dr. Shirley Weber. Dr. Weber is Secretary of State of California now. And Dr. Weber was very supportive of the idea of reparations, so much so that she worked with a lot of community groups like ours, CJEC, and even let us help write the final version of the California Reparations Bill. The California Reparations Task Force, by law, has three jobs. The first job is to study reparations. The second job is to educate the California public about reparations. And the third job is to actually create a reparations plan. Create a reparations plan. There are 9 members of the California Reparations Task Force. And by law, the task force has to hold at least 10 public hearings and sometime last fall, it added onto that to itself 12 community listening sessions. So I mentioned there are 9 members, and I'm gonna go to show you who those members are. But on your seats, you should have something that looks like this. And all of the members of the California Task Force are right here in front of you on the card that you have on your seats. So I'll briefly go over who the 9 members are, and then take any questions you have, and then we'll get into some of your thoughts and your ideas, because that's what we're really here for. So the first member of the California Reparations Task Force that I want to talk about is the chair, Camilla Moore, out of the LA area. The second member is the vice chair, Dr. Amos E. Brown, out of the Bay Area. Some of y'all may be familiar with Dr. Brown, out of the Bay Area. The next member is State Senator Stephen Bradford. Next, we've got State Assembly Member Reginald Jones Sawyer. After that, we have Council Member Monica Montgomery Stepp out of San Diego. We have also Dr. Javon Scott Lewis of UC Berkeley. We've got Dr. Cheryl Grills. We also have Attorney Lisa Holder. And last but not least, we have Attorney Donald K. Tamaki. I believe Don Tamaki may be joining us virtually here very shortly. So these are your 9 members of the California Reparations Task Force. As mentioned, the task force legislation and bill that created the task force was signed into law in 2020. The task force didn't start meeting, though, until June of 2021. And they have, by law, 2 years from the date that they first started meeting to actually do those 3 jobs that I talked about. So they have from June of 2021 till June of 2023 to do the work that the task force is by law required to do. After the task force finishes its work, guess what? It ain't over. So the task force is going to, after it studies reparations, after it educates the public about reparations, after it creates the reparations plan, the task force then will issue a final report, which will be given to the California State Legislature, and then it will be on the California State Legislature and us, really, to make sure that what's in that plan actually gets done. But what goes in the plan is what comes from you. And that's why we're doing these listening sessions, because what goes in the plan for reparations actually comes from you and from us. That's why we are doing listening sessions, to hear what you think should be in the California reparations plan. What types of reparations and types of repair should be in the plan? I can give you some of my ideas just to give you an idea of what I want. Okay? But even more important than what I want is what you want. So for example, I'm just gonna keep it real with you. I don't want to pay no taxes for a little while, maybe a long while. Okay? I want my credit score reset. Okay, I want to go up to 800 automatically. Okay? I want some regular income. I want some actual regular income. I want compensation. I want some wealth. I don't want to pay for school. I don't want to pay. I want all of my debts cleared. I'm just giving you some of the things that I want. Okay? But let me stop there. I don't think we have any more slides, so I'm gonna pause here. First, do you have any questions about anything you've heard about California reparations so far? Any questions? Just curious. Okay. Sure. Yes, sure. So the question was, how many times does the California Reparations Task Force have to meet, and how many community listening sessions are going on? So law says that the task force itself, those 9 members have to meet publicly 10 times over the course of 2 years. 10 times. They've met so far, and this I'm going to try to explain simply to not confuse nobody. When the law came into effect back in 2020, and when the task force started meeting officially in 2021, so first they signed the law, then they had to pick a task force. So it took them about a year to pick the task force. So the task force officially got picked in 2021. They started meeting in 2021. Okay. But the law said that the task force has to meet 10 times publicly, but it said that they have to meet 10 times publicly in person. But because the law was signed during the COVID era, all but like 1 or 2 of the meetings that they had to start were virtual. So they actually met 6, 7 times virtually since June of last year till about April of this year. So they had really 7, 8 virtual meetings, but none of those, maybe one of those only, actually counted towards the 10 because the law said they had to meet 10 times in person. So they actually have only had 1 or 2 in-person meetings. The first one, really, if you could sort of kind of like that, and the last one, which was in April. So how many meetings are left? 7 or 8 in-person meetings from now until the end or the middle of next year, so June or so of next year. And the task force will start to meet again in September. So next month, they will start meeting again. They took a break from April of this year till September of this year. And during that break, community organizations like ours have been going around and holding community listening sessions. The task force said we want 12, but there's been way more than 12. I could tell you we've done 7 or 8 ourselves, 7, 8 or 9 ourselves, just with our one organization. There are 6 other organizations that are also doing community listening sessions across the state of California. And I know they've done multiple listening sessions also. So there have been already more than 12 community listening sessions already done. And again, the task force by law has to meet in person at least 10 times at least. Hope that answers. Yes, sir. So the public hearings feature all of the task force members. So the public hearings that they have to hold, the 10 in person by law, are with all 9 of the task force meetings, and those meetings are also public. So you can attend those meetings. You can be there. There is a public comment period for every single one of those task force hearings for the first hour of every hearing. And by the way, every single one hearing, I'm trying to make this clear, make this not confusing. Every single one hearing is 2 days long, 8 hours each day. Okay? So 8 hours each day for 2 days equals 1 hearing, and that's public. All 9 members of the task force are there. And then for the community listening sessions, we try to have, and we've worked to have, and the task force has worked to have at least 1 task force member at every single community listening session. The task force is bound by some rules. They have to follow some rules. So for example, if it's not a public hearing, not more than 2 task force members can be there at one time. So for the community listening sessions, by the rules, they can't have more than 2 task force members there at one time, because if they have more than 2, then it becomes a public hearing, and then they have to do the public hearing process. So the community listening sessions and the public hearings are a little bit different, but all the task force members are at the public hearings, and at least 1 is usually at the community listening sessions. Thank you for those questions. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Great question. Yes, so who picked the task force members? Yes, who picked these task force members? So 5 of the task force members were picked by the governor himself. 5 of the 9 were picked by the governor himself. 2 of the task force members were picked by the leader of the state assembly, a brother by the name of Anthony Rendon. And then the other 2 of the 9 were picked by the leader of the state senate, a person by the name of Tony Atkins. So Tony Atkins, leader of the senate, picked 2. Anthony or Tony Rendon picked 2, and then Governor Gavin Newsom picked 5. For your question about the qualifications, also on the card is a QR code. So this funny looking barcode thing is a QR code. If you scan that, it'll take you right. If you scan the QR code, it'll take you right to the California Reparations Task Force website bio page. So you can see all of their bios, see what they did, what they've been doing, what they about. I can answer a little bit though about some of the general qualifications that they're supposed to have. So in the law that created the task force, the law said that 1, not more than, I believe it was 2, 3, maybe 4. So not more than 2 to 4 members of the task force could be people who are politicians or state legislators. So there was a limit on the number of how many people who's on the task force could be members of the state legislature. The law also said that for qualifications, members of the task force had to have experience in either law or community work or reparations work. So there were some ideas about what kind of qualifications should be for the members, generally speaking. And generally speaking, each of the task force members fits what's in the law, generally speaking. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, great question. So the question is, what are they looking for? What's the purpose of doing community listening sessions? Why hear from the community? There's, I think, one straight answer to that, and then there's more of a general answer. The straight answer is because the task force has to put together a reparations plan. So they want ideas for what should be in the plan from the community. So that's the straight answer. The general answer is, and I think this is actually a good thing, and this goes back to what comes after they put the plan together. So I'm just gonna keep it real with y'all. It ain't like next year is June of next year, we have a plan, and then now we have reparations. That's not the end of the fight. Next year is not the end of the fight. The plan has to become law. So what goes in the plan has to become law. So that means we have more work ahead of us after we create the plan. But the plan is more likely to become law if you involved in doing the plan in the first place. If we showed up next year and just said, here go your reparations plan, you may not like what's in there. You may not especially if you wasn't a part of the process, right? You may be less likely to support it. You're gonna be less engaged, you're gonna be less involved with it. So the general part of that answer is that they need the community to be a part of the actual planning process so that we give ourselves the best chance of actually getting the plan done, because it's going to take, and I'm going to tell y'all, and I said this in the June, but we did one of these in Juneteenth in LA. We did a listening session, and I said this back then, that I have something what I call the reparations equation. So it's like, all right, what it's going to take to get reparations? What is it going to take? In addition to what you think should be in the plan. To get reparations into law, it's going to take at least a majority of the state assembly people to vote for what you want in your plan, at least a majority of the state senators to vote for what you want in your plan, and at least one governor to sign it. So there's 40 state senators, I believe. So you need 21 state senators. So that's a majority of the state senators. There's 80 state assembly people, I think. So you need 41. That's a majority, half plus one of the state assembly people. and then you need one governor. So the math is 41 plus 21 plus 1. That equals California reparations. And again, it's more likely that you will get to that if you're involved in the process now. Great questions. Yes, sir. Okay. For some stuff, yes. So depending on what's in the plan, you, and this is a little political education, it's good, right? This is partly why we here. Some stuff to get made law, you need at least a majority, so a simple majority or half plus 1, 51%. And some stuff you need 2/3 of the people voting on it to do it. It depends on what it is. So for example, if anything that's in the plan says we need to change the California state constitution for some reason, so let's say we have in the plan, we want to change the California state constitution and add something in there specifically that relates to reparations for us. Something like that would take actually 2/3 or 2 out of 3 or 66% of the state legislators to actually vote for, because if you want to change your state constitution, you actually need a higher level of support. You can't just have half plus 1. You need a higher level of support. You need actually 2 out of 3. So if something is in the plan that says change the state constitution, yes. If something is in the plan that says we don't want to change the state constitution, but we want to pass this law to do this or that, then we may not need the 2/3, but it depends on what's in the plan, right? So another great question, another great thought. Any other questions? Yes, sir. And yes.
So my experience at my age now shows me that the more Black people are involved, the more power we have to get what we need done. So there has to be some kind of way that we talk amongst each other to make sure that when the task force sees us and how serious we are about it, that will help them make their decision.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And for those who couldn't hear the brother saying that, the more support that we have from Black folks, the more likely things are to get done. That is what I expect to see happen. That is what I want to see happen. And that's what I think we should see happen. That's partly why we are doing this work here. Yeah, right on. Do you have a question too? Yes. Yeah, so the questions are the public meetings of the task force in the same place, and what are the dates? So those are 2 great questions, 2 additional great questions. So the meetings are, the ones that are in person are held throughout the state. So they don't stay in one place, they go from city to city to city. The one that was in April, that was the first in-person meeting, which was in April, even though they've been meeting virtually. But the first in-person meeting was in San Francisco. That was in April. The next meeting is going to be in September, and it's going to be in LA. We don't have a specific date yet. That's public that we can share, that we know, but we know it's going to be in LA, and we know it's going to be in September. The dates are released usually a couple of weeks or so before the task force meeting, and they are published on the task force website, and on the card that you have access and a link to the task force website. They're also on our website too. We also publish them on our website at CJECofficial.org. We also post them on our social media. If you go to our website, we have a newsletter that we send out via email. And so we send out a newsletter every single month, and we make sure that we include any of the dates about California Reparations Task Force hearings that we know of. So we don't know the date for the September hearing yet, but we know it's in September, and we know it is going to be in LA, and it's going to be in person, but also virtual also. So you can, if you can make it to LA, you'll be able to watch it. You'll still be able to give public comment too. And all of the hearings and meetings are, by the way, live streamed on ETM Media Group on YouTube. So if you want to watch the meetings and hearings virtually, you can watch them on ETM Media Group on YouTube also. In addition, you can also watch them on the California Reparations Task Force website as well. And yeah. Okay. So any other questions before we transition? Yes, hey. Great question. So right now, the short answer is there is nothing in the plan yet because the plan is still being developed now. And so part of why we are talking to folks like you and others here is to actually figure out what you think should be in the plan for brothers and sisters like you said who've been locked up, who formerly incarcerated. So actually, when we get to the community listening part, I would actually like to hear from you maybe what you think should be in that plan. What should we do for our brothers and sisters locked up or who got a record? The task force released in June of this year, and I didn't mention this, so I'm glad you helped me mention it. The task force released this year in June its first report. So the first report of the task force was released in June of this year. It is available on our website, cjecofficial.org. It's also available on the California Reparations Task Force website too. And in that report, it has a summary or a list and some ideas about what maybe should be in the reparations plan, but it's not the final plan. So there are some things in there that talk about the different things that may be in the plan or have been thought about and talked about, but the actual development of the plan part of the task force work really starts now and goes to next year. So yeah, I would love to hear what you think should be in that plan because I'm sure you'll have just as many good ideas, if not more, than the people who are actually on the task force. Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. All right. So you got a question, brother? Yep. I could say cash payments is a focus for me, man. So, and we'll, and I thought I saw Don there. So, yes, though the general answer is yes. And as we were mentioning to start, the Reparations Task Force defines or has to create a reparations plan that has 5 forms of reparations in it, at least. The first one of those forms is compensation. So that's the money part. That's the financial part. That's the economic part. So the general answer is yes. How much a part of the plan? Will it be 50% of the plan? Will it be 75% of the plan? Should it be 50% of the plan? Should it be 75% of the plan? That's coming next. But the general answer is yes. All right. And without further ado, I want to bring on and welcome one of the members of the California Reparations Task Force, Don Tamaki. Put your hands together for Don Tamaki for joining us here today. Appreciate you, Don. What's up?
Mute my mic. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, Chris, for inviting me. Thank you, CJEC, ETM Media. Thank you, Kim Mims, for extending the invitation. And I really want to thank you all who are attending in the audience for your interest in this. And thanks Cap City for hosting it. So, you know, I could not summarize basically the Reparations Task Force any better than what Chris did. He really did an excellent job. My purpose here is to listen and to hear your suggestions and remarks. For example, when Dimitri was talking about what sounded like an incubator for businesses, I think that's a really good idea. And that's really my purpose. My personal background is I've spent a lifetime doing civil rights work as an attorney. I was involved in the Japanese American redress and reparations legislation effort. One of the few modern examples of where the government has righted an historic wrong. And while I want to emphasize there's no equivalence at all between what Japanese Americans suffered through, which was 4 to 5 years of being incarcerated in concentration camps, as compared to 400 years of oppression faced by African Americans. There may be some helpful lessons learned from our community struggle, and I suspect that was one of the reasons why I was appointed by the governor. I'm the only non-African American member of the task force, and I take that with the utmost seriousness. And I think my special mission is probably to reach out to non-African American audiences to persuade them that this is the justice issue of our time. And while the movement has to be led by people like Chris and Kim and other African American leaders, and has to address the specific harmed class of people that Chris has talked about and has been identified by the task force, there's no question that there must be a reach out to the middle of California and the middle of the country. I mean, 6% of California's population is African American, 14% of the United States, and ultimately what we're talking about, as Chris mentioned, was that there has to be legislative remedies, and for that to happen, the state and the country has to have the political will to do this, and that requires not only mobilizing the harmed community of African Americans, but it also means mobilizing everyone else. So that's distinctly part of my mission. I do want to add a little bit about what the task force is doing. And again, I want to commend Chris. You did a really great job in summarizing this. We've spent the past year in 9 public hearings listening to expert testimony and doing research. So the first part of the legislation requires the task force to study the harm and issue a report. And California has put a lot of resources behind just that effort, including 10 lawyers from the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice and a number of PhDs, and enlisting experts all over the country. And as Chris mentioned, on June 1, the task force issued what I think is a groundbreaking report on the harm beginning in 1619 and tracking through Jim Crow and racial terror to another 90 years of that, 246 years of enslavement, another 90 years of Jim Crow, another 60 years of separate but equal, where discrimination was enforced by law, and then decades more of just discrimination into the modern era. And so it released this report. It's almost 500 pages, and it's a sweeping indictment. And it's one of the only government reports that connects the dots between the harms of the past and follows that in a through line to the consequences that we face today in terms of communities that are the most underserved, the most overpoliced, the most suffering from health issues, the most disparate in terms of wealth and opportunity, and so on, all the things that you already know. I'm old enough, I'm probably the oldest guy attending this hearing, that, to remember 1968 and the uprisings that occurred in American cities, and a presidential commission convened to establish the causes and the remedies for what was happening. That was called the Kerner Commission Report of 1968. And the report issued, it did somewhat of a job of connecting the dots between the beginnings of the transatlantic slave trade through the eras of enslavement, Jim Crow, separate but equal, intentional discrimination and exclusion, and so on. But that was only about literally 40 pages. Nonetheless, it made predictions about the future. This is in 1968. And one of the most sad and striking things about it is, of course, every prediction it issued came true. And the reality was in 1968, no one wanted to look at it. No one wanted to talk about it. So it was largely ignored. And we're hoping that with this report, this will be something that cannot be ignored. And it's gotten some national publicity, and we intend to amplify it a lot. Now, for you all, 500 pages is a lot, but there's a 28-page executive summary. So if you Google California Reparations report, you'll find the folder to the report, including the executive summary. And for those, even the scholars historically who think they know this history, I think they will learn something. And a lot of it is shocking, but not surprising. And the outcomes that we're seeing were planned. They were planned policies from post-enslavement to the early 1900s, 1930s redlining, to racial zoning and all the things that created, the racial wealth divide today. And so I think this report is going to resonate nationally, and for it to have the label of the state of California, the largest state of the union, I think is helpful. So we've done that on as of June 1, 2022. And the next task, as Chris outlined, was what do we do about it? What are the repairs? And beginning on September 23rd and 24th, the public hearings that Chris mentioned, we will be at first, defining what or taking a look at international forms of reparations as well as domestic, including the movement of my own community, Japanese American reparations, but also including Native American reparations, Native Hawaiian reparations, and some of the other groups, as well as what happened internationally in South Africa and so on. We are taking basically the results from this listening session and the expert testimony that we will hear to begin the discussion on what the repair should be. And for me, it's certainly all on the table. Japanese American reparations was a cash payment, was a direct cash payment. And I could tell you from our own personal experience how important that was to make it meaningful, substantive, as Chris mentioned, and a restoration of dignity and humanity and acknowledgement, and so I think one of the issues is not only the huge wealth gap, but it's also the acknowledgement of, how the country profited from enslavement and benefited every decade thereafter. And so the country has gone through a couple cycles where there have been fairly massive transfers of wealth that created the middle class in America that has largely excluded African Americans, as just an example. And I think meaningful compensation, substantive acknowledgement, those 5 elements of reparations that Chris mentioned are really crucial. And it goes to the soul of the country. So, of course, this is a matter of compensation, restitution, satisfaction, guarantees of non-repetition for African Americans. But from a larger American point of view, it's also about the soul of the country and justice. It's a justice issue. So I think I'm going to stop here, but I just wanted to give you a background of what we're doing. Chris mentioned, and there was a question about the number of public hearings left. I think the task force is taking their job, each one, with utmost seriousness. So I think personally, no matter what the legislation says, that people will want to meet whatever it takes to get the job done. And so by June of 2023, by law, we have to come out with a set of recommendations or plan and then that will get turned over to the legislature, and then it becomes an organizing, lobbying issue. And so I'm really grateful that CJEC and among others are doing these listening sessions. I will mention, however, that the harm and the universe of harm is so staggering. The amounts that were taken out of African Americans' wages and bodies and identity and family and everything else. If you were just to take the wage element, we're talking in the trillions of dollars. So California should definitely do its part because it was complicit in the harm. Did not enter the Union as a slave state, but Jim Crow was imported into California. It became a leader in redlining and racial covenants and in discrimination. It must acknowledge that. But the other piece of it is the country needs to acknowledge it too. So we're hoping that this organizing effort that begins with groups like CJEC and others will spread to other states and then percolate upward to Congress so that it has the will and the backbone to actually do this. So there's a certain plan, I think a logic to it. What begins in California does tend to spread nationwide. So I think that's the other part of our mission. So Chris, I'm going to stop here if that's okay.
It's more than okay, brother. Thank you so much. Please put your hands together for Don Tamaki, the California Reparations Task Force. Thank you, Don. Appreciate that. So, do you have a question, brother? Don, can you take one question from the audience?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. What's our questions? And then we will get to you, our community. I think brother's taking the mic over there to you. There you go. All right.
My question is, why, Don, why do you think it is or has been much harder for American freedmen to get reparations than it was for the Japanese, Native Americans, the European Jews, so on and so forth? Why are those people easier to get compensated versus American freedmen who has been fighting, I think, since 1890s from, I think the first ones are Cali House.
Yep.
So, and this isn't a new thing that we've been doing.
Right.
We've always been fighting for it. But why has it been easier for other groups than us? Because
of anti-Black hatred, because of the racial hierarchy. And that goes back to 1619. And, what you point out, the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, this was the bill that provided compensation to Japanese Americans for their incarceration in concentration camps, was passed in 88. John Conyers introduced H.R. 40 literally the next year. And he introduced it as a study bill. In other words, to study what happened to African Americans and then follow the same trajectory, that once the study report was done, then it could move on and set the foundation for a bill providing actual compensation. And for years, it barely got one or two co-sponsors. It now has 196 co-sponsors, HR 40, but has not been able to get to even a floor vote. So bottom line, the Congress has shown no national will to even study this, even talk about it, let alone actually do something about it. And so just a bit of history from my point of view, I think white Europeans invented a different kind of slavery, and it reached the Americas in North America in 1619. I mean, slavery has existed as long as civilization, but this new kind of slavery in which human beings were reduced to farm animals, pigs and goats, was based on race and the color of your skin. And once that was successful, where people can be dehumanized to that degree, then any crime against humanity was possible to happen and did happen without a second thought. So after Civil War ended 1865, slavery was abolished, but new forms of hatred emerged to basically institute systems, customs, and practices as close to enslavement as possible. And the racial hierarchy was born, and that was white, hierarchy valuing white lives above all others, with black lives on the bottom and everybody else in between. And although the people in between have also suffered from having a target on their backs, the one constant throughout the 400-year history is anti-black hatred. And so I think that's certainly one explanation of this. And so when we talk about reparations, yeah, compensation is absolutely a part of it. But underlying this is a toxic pathology that goes to the core of what the country is about, that infects everybody. And the bias is just through and through the system. So I hope that answers your question. I think there is a reason why there hasn't been the will to take this up. And I think there is a reason to focus on specifically on the harmed class of descendants that is the focus of the task force. But beyond that, I think we have to do, and I'm putting this on me and others who are not African American, to start shining a light on all of this, because that's the difference, and it's been persistent, it's been intractable, it's been unmoving. I mean, segregation today is as bad as it was in the 1940s. I mean, despite all the legal changes and despite the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and 65, there is a culture that is unmoving, in fact, wants to move it backward. This critical race theory and, making it against the law to tell the truth, teach history, that's all a part of this. So what we're doing in California is actually as important as the money is, and it is paramount. I want to stress that to be not understood, and compensation. We really are on a mission, I think, to change this culture. Otherwise, this toxic recycling pathology gets recycled over and over again. And I'll stop here, but I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, brother. So let me take one more question here, Don, because I think people appreciate the opportunity to speak directly to task force members. And then, brother, if you do have a follow-up, we'll come back to you.
Okay, excuse me for not standing. My back's hurting a little bit. But as my grandfather, we're from Kansas, as my grandfather.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anything. Chris, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anything.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Can you speak again? I'm not hearing anything.
Hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good, thank you. I was saying that my...
Now you cut out. I cannot hear you.
Getting this straight right now. And maybe, should I give him my mic?
Yes.
Maybe, Chris, if you don't mind.
How about, here, take mine just in case. You sure? Okay. Okay, I'm getting direction here. All right, Don, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you, Chris, and I heard another voice.
Okay, good. Go ahead, brother.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, good. Okay, I was saying that my grandfather and his father, my great-grandfather, they were always very serious about 40 acres and a mule. Now, when I became a teenager here in Oak Park, it kind of faded away and people were just not really serious about it anymore. How much does 40 acres and a mule come to effect on your task force and reparations and compensation?
It's a promise broken. I mean, it demonstrates historically and unmistakably, undeniably, that following the issuance of Field Order 15 by Sherman, that that promise was broken, and not just the 40 acres and a mule. There was 400,000 acres deeded over to Black families, newly freed, to begin tilling and working the soil on their own. And those acreages stretched from South Carolina to Florida on a coastal strip 30 miles wide. And what happened is Lincoln was assassinated. Andrew Johnson then became the president. He was the vice president. He was not sympathetic at all to the concept of equality or any rights for Black people. The South threatened to secede basically all over again and to calm them, to mollify them, to get them to go along. He withdrew federal troops from the South, and the 400,000 acres that were actually, the title had passed, they were deeded over, was rescinded. They were kicked off the land. Newly freed Americans were kicked off the land, and the land reclaimed by their former enslavers. And so, of course, the 40 acres and a mule became, a key thing, but that wasn't the only thing, as you know. So, but as far as whether it resonates with task force members, absolutely. And it's pretty much, it's a central part of the interim report that got issued on June 1st.
Thank you.
This is Jesse Dan. I had the first question to you, asked you about why it was so hard for freedmen to give reparations. My follow-up question, your answer to that was quickly anti-Blackness. And that's a historical piece to it, yeah. And then now, with all of the other racial groups that we have in California now, coming from anti-Blackness countries, a lot of times, Hispanic countries, Asian countries, others that have anti-Blackness in their cultures. Now, California being made up of a lot of other racial groups as well. I guess my question is that anti-Blackness now gone, or is it still prevalent and still heavy today? Because we got to get this bill signed and passed through more than half of the assembly people here. So it's like, what is the likelihood, I guess, of that passing with people being able to remove the anti-Blackness and just do what's right for American freedom? Do you think that the anti-Blackness is still here?
Yeah, I think it's still here. And I think we see it resonating all the time. I think Trump, when he came into office, made it acceptable to be frank about it. And as well as other groups, you remember that, and other groups are targeted too, but again, the constant, as opposed to the occasional, the constant targeting is focused on African Americans. But when the Chinese virus came out, when Asian Americans became the target, Muslims were labeled as terrorists, Mexicans were labeled as drug dealers and rapists, and countless African Americans being killed at the hands of law enforcement during an encounter. I mean, until George Floyd, it would barely evoke a shrug because it was so normal. And I think as far as I would count that the very fact that it's so normal that people don't even recognize the anti-blackness, to me, is indicative that it certainly is still here. And it infects everybody. I'm talking about the whole population, no matter what color people are. So I think when we frame this, again, I want to stress it has to be led by African American leadership, and the beneficiary class must be African Americans, and specifically the descendants of enslaved people. We have to still make that leap into the rest of the country, in the middle, to shine a light on this. And so, yeah, I believe there's a resistance. In other parts of the country, it's much worse. They don't even want to talk about it. I mean, there's instances in the report, for example, that the history textbooks in Texas, label enslaved people as, quote, workers, like tantamount to immigrants. And, this kind of teaching of inaccurate history, or not teaching it at all, or the fact that, 100 years after the fact, we're learning about Tulsa and Greenwood and the massacres that occurred there 100 years after the fact. And one of the things about the report is that the history is littered with Greenwoods. So there's just been a reluctance to recognize that core part of the culture. And then secondly, to actually bury it. And so I think as part of the task force, we've got to shine a light on it and address it. So yeah, I think this anti-Black bias still exists, and it is in part responsible for the outcomes that we're seeing.
Right on. Again, put your hands together for Don Tamaki, California Reparations Task Force. Thank you, Don. And thank you all for your questions too. So I want to
thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. I want to keep the attention focused on your thoughts and your ideas here. We want to hear more from you. Okay, we want to hear more about what you think. We have a series of a few questions that we want to pose to you, the audience, and then get your ideas and thoughts for the California Reparations Task Force. The things that you say and the ideas that you have are being collected and will be included in a couple different ways for the California reparations effort. The first is that the ideas and thoughts that you have will be included in a report to the Reparations Task Force that's being put together by the UCLA Bunch Center right now, which is helping to coordinate all of the community outreach that you see going on across the country, across the state. And then also your ideas and thoughts will be included in what the task force ultimately puts together for its reparations plan, which is what we've been talking about for the better part of our session today. So I think we have a mic here. If you would like to share your thoughts and your ideas, I'm going to ask that you bring up that slide if you can, with some of the questions that we have for folks. If you would like to share your thoughts on what your thoughts and ideas are for these particular questions. First is, when and why, and even how, when and why, maybe even how, did your Black family come to California? So how did you get here? How did you get here? Secondly, in order to repair the harm, California has to address the harm, has to acknowledge the harm. So what are some of the harms, 1, 2, that you want California reparations to address specifically? Next, what are the policies, the forms of reparations that you want California reparations to look like? What does reparations look like to you? And lastly, what does it look like to you after reparations? So after we do reparations, what does California look like to you? I sometimes ask this in this way. I say, if you snap your fingers right now, boom. Okay, now we got reparations. Now look out the window. What does it look like outside? What does it feel like outside? What does it smell like outside? What do your people look like? That's what we want to know also. So if you'd like to share your thoughts, we got a mic up here. You can line up here at the mic if you have thoughts, or if you want to stay where you at. I think we have another mic here too that we can help pass around. So we'll give you a second to think about the questions. Again, when and why did your Black family come to California? What are the harms that you want reparations to address specifically that's been done to you, to your family? What does the forms of reparations and repair look like to you? And what would it look like after reparations to you? What does California look like after reparations? Yeah, sure.
And I'd just like to add to that, since this is the Build Black Better small business resource listening session, I'd like to hear about what you would like to see for business resources in Sacramento that would help Black businesses thrive.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, if you're a business owner too, by the way, we definitely want to know specifically about your thoughts around business. So, again, when and why did your Black family come to California, and how? What are the harms you want California reparations to address? What types of repair do you want to see? What do you want to see the forms of reparations actually look like? And what does California look like after reparations is done? Any volunteers?
Go first, anyone? Test one, test two. I'd like to say where we came from, California, man. Answer any of those questions that were up on the, if you don't want to, that's fine. Does anybody else want to answer any of those questions? You want to say those questions one more time, brother? You want to?
I don't remember the order of the questions, but I would love to, if I can see the questions again, or if you wanted to let Chris ask me those questions again.
Yes, sir. So when and why did your Black family come to California, and how? What harms do you want to see California reparations actually address? What are the specific harms? What does reparations look like to you? What are the forms of repair to you? What do you want reparations to look like? And then specifically, what does California look like after reparations to you?
Well, I was born here in California. My mother, her family, her grandfather and grandmother came out here in what year? In about 1943. They came out here for work. My grandfather, I know he worked for Firestone, so he used to make tires. Came out here to LA, or not here to LA, but came out to Los Angeles and continued to work for Firestone. So on my mother's side, on my father's side, same thing. Black folks came out here to California. He's from St. Louis area. My mother was from Tennessee. Her parents from Mississippi. But so that's why I'm here, is because of my parents, my grandparents, their parents moving out here for work. And what does reparations look like? Is that the next one?
Yeah. What are the harms you want reparations to address, and then what does reparations look like? Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. What I would love for reparations to address is, I guess, just the obvious. I think one thing that is not talked about enough is when American freedmen built those communities, over 30 plus thriving Black areas and towns. One thing that happened to us consistently was the destruction of it, not because of ourselves, but because of anti-Blackness, white racism. And then we look at, and we are now compared to other racial groups that have the Chinatowns and so on and so forth. And then people ask us, well, how come they are doing well? And, they have their own towns and business districts, but you don't. It's for the simple fact is they're not sabotaged like we are consistently. So that means that we need to be compensated financially. What I imagine the repair would be is more so, to me, more so both economic and then both protection. Because even if we have economics, there's always that protection factor that we need to have. So that would be the repair. The one or two things that I would say is the economics, because we've always had businesses. I myself I'm a licensed electrical contractor, so I have a business. It's just myself. I don't have employees yet because I don't have the money. I don't have the ability to go into massive amounts of debt in order to grow my business yet. The work is here, but as a contractor for over 17 years, I understand that the market fluctuates. Even if you're a good contractor, the market still fluctuates. So I can't just go into debt to try to build my business up without protecting my personal assets and my family. So economics, that's why I speak to that. Grants would be something that part of the reparations that I would want Black businesses to have, not loans, but grants. Other groups have came to this country and gotten money, not loans. So, and no other group has suffered through what we have. So, it's obvious. And then the other two. Okay, I think I went through three already, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The last one, and this is one that I'm usually particularly interested in. I'll just ask you this one too. It is so. Let's do some imagination. Let's actually imagine ourselves after reparations, if we can. It's something that we've been having to do more often. What does our community look like after reparations to you? If you could, do that sort of thought experiment with me. What does reparations look like? What does our community look like after reparations to you?
As we watch those documentaries of the Rosewoods, Tulsa, the Wilmingtons, and the list goes on. When they, in the documentaries, how they talk about the height of it and the beauty of the business districts, the Black homes, the Black businesses, the churches, the families, that in my mind is what I I would love to see, is basically Black community, Black nationhood. And I was watching a documentary the other day about Tulsa, and it's like that's the one that we go to because that's the one that most people probably talk about because of the wealth that was in there and in a short time frame, and how people just enjoyed. I think there was 3 survivors that are still currently living, and how they talk about how the beauty and the joy it was before those moments of terror. So that's what when I envision what could happen and the possibility is basically for me is a Black business district, a Black community, and just yeah. I mean, not to try to go too deep, but
yeah,
that's what that's what I close my eyes and see.
Yeah. Thank you for that, brother.
Yes, sir.
That's dope. That's dope. Other thoughts? Other ideas? When and why did your Black family come here to California? Brother, by the way, brother, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. When and why did your Black family come to California? What are the harms you want California reparations to address? What do you want reparations to address? What's been done that you want reparations to address here? What does the repair look like? What forms of repair do you want for what the harms are? And then, as the brother was just saying, and we were just working through together, what does it look like for us after reparations? That's something that we've been having to do again more often, which is think about that, be imaginative. What do we look like after reparations? Any other thoughts? Just curious.
Do we have any other business owners in here that would like to give us their thoughts as well?
And that's you, Moya, by the way.
Anyone? Yes, Moya, I'm in the mass media group. I am a business owner, and what do I want? I want a lot of money. I want land. I want a hit film. We have reparations now in the building that we're actually working on. And yeah, as far as our people, man, we just want some retribution, right?
Okay. Well, let me ask you, brother, since you got the mic. First of all, we were blessed to have I think your mom and your dad here earlier.
Yeah, shout out to Leland and Cheryl Glass. Appreciate them for showing up.
So, right. When and why did your family get here, brother?
Wow, I'll just go back a little bit. From what I've been able to research, one of my ancestors actually goes back to South Carolina in the 1700s. So that's how far I can go back. As far as California, what my pops, who was here, actually told me, I believe my grandmother and my grandfather came from Oklahoma or Kansas. I want to say either it's definitely in the Midwest in the 1950s. And my dad was actually born here in Sacramento. So, and then I actually was born in Oregon though. But I came to California when I was young, about 4 or 5. So my family moved back. So I'm definitely a California resident, a long-time California resident. Maybe a little longer than you, brother, because I think you've been here how long now?
Almost 10 years now.
Well, you got
Almost
your California residency.
But my father's from California, though. So
definitely, for sure, brother. So yeah, man. So that's how my folks got out to California.
And let me ask, what are the harms you want California reparations to address? What are some of the harms that you think California reparations should address specifically?
Wow, brother, that's a difficult question because there's so many harms that we can talk about, right? We can talk about mass incarceration, right? And shout out to Daniel Brown, who was working on ACA 3, right? But I guess that didn't go through. So that's one thing we got to work on. I think somebody also mentioned cannabis industry. So many of our brothers and sisters got locked up over, something that's natural. And now we got others, the dominant society, who's basically taking it over, right? I know you and myself, we were actually doing some research on how many Black-owned distilleries were actually here in Sacramento. And as far as I'm aware, Chris, how many did we find out?
0.
There you go. So yeah, so that's one thing. Man, incarceration, harms, obviously police brutality. We got to look into law enforcement as well. That's one thing. Since I've been in media, we definitely need more media presence, right? We need really like freedmen media presence. That's the biggest thing from our perspective, not just from the dominant society. Like even Kim and myself, we looked into the film commission here, and we're still investigating to see actually how many Black film commissioners are in California, right? From what we can find, there might be 1 or 2, but for the most part, from what we can research or what we have researched, there's basically aren't any, film commissioners. So we definitely need more access to media. And I want to shout out to Tony Harvey. Actually, matter of fact, I'm giving mic real quick to Tony Harvey, man, because he's actually in our reparations document. And brother, if you could just speak to the people real quick, tell them who you are and your good work that you've been doing for the community, brother.
Thank you, Amoy. Yeah, Antonio Ray Harvey. All my friends and family know me as Tony Harvey. I've been covering the California Reparations Task Force for, well, before it became law in what, September
2020, yep.
2020. And thank you, Chris. And one thing I got to say, since I've been covering this, because I covered a significant community listening session last week in the Bay Area, Vallejo, nice turnout. A lot of people showed up. Really appreciated that too. I had my stepson with me, Solomon. Really enjoyed it, really powerful. But before I go any further, and I do want to, Amoya, thank you, and you too, Kim, for giving me the mic. Sacramento, you got to show up, okay? These Reparation Task Force activities, proceedings are really important, especially here. I know Chris has been working on this extremely hard, you know, through the organizations, ARCC, and of course, Emin, the mass media, and you know, some of those
CJEC,
organizations,
yeah.
you know, down in Southern California. Sacramento, you have to show up and share your stories, okay? When I got home from that community listening session in Vallejo, Liddell's Shoes, right down in the heart of Vallejo on Georgia Street, Black-owned business. I seen at least 300 views from that listening session alone, that meeting session alone, okay? None of the task force meeting members were there, but I'm pretty sure they saw the impact that that had. Well, Sacramento, you have to stand up and do the same, okay? I've been living here for 34 years this month, maybe this day, back in 1988, August 1988. And I know you guys are glued in and engaged in these type of issues that concern our community. Sacramento, show up, okay? Because LA been showing up, Oakland been showing up, San Francisco, okay? Show up, okay? I went to the first in-person meeting there last April, 12th and 13th, I think that was. I know it was the first one, you know, they've been having the virtual meeting. San Francisco, show up. San Diego, show up. LA, show up. Fresno, show up. Okay, these type of things are for you to show up, to go on record and explain what happened to you, what happened to your family, okay? Whatever you know that went happen back to 1619, but especially what's going on with you and your community and everything that surrounds you. You have to show up. Because right now, from what I see, Attorney Don Tamaki, I want to thank you, you know, for participating in this event. I'm kind of disappointed that Sacramento didn't show up here today. So can you please, and I think this is the second time since the June 8th, Juneteenth that has been held here. Please show up, okay? This man brought his mom. Mr. Washington, is that correct? Okay, and they tell y'all about the South, and they live right here in California. We need more stories like that, okay? Louisiana, okay? My people is from the Jackson, Mississippi area. I grew up in Illinois, of course, okay? I'm a son of the Great Migration, okay? As many of you are too. I bet you 90% of the people here is the sons and daughters of the Great Migration. Come here and tell these stories, okay? You just said where your people's from, okay? Kim, your people from Louisiana, around Shreveport. I know this. The Bayou, okay? Close to North Texas. All right, show up and tell these stories because we live here, we were born and raised here, we moved here, we migrated here. We need to tell about what California has done to us while we're here. Because in the last 18 months, I've heard many, many stories through these proceedings, okay? One of them that I have to share, which was really impactful to me, the California highway system, the federal highway system, but what it did to California here in Northern California in 1957, the Highway Act, when they were building these federal highways, they chose people of color communities, Black communities, Oakland, and ran right through them. They didn't go through those white folks' neighborhoods and stuff like that. Even here in Oak Park, 99, I-5, they go through Black community. Those were racism acts. Those were deliberately done. Okay, that's what I've learned through here. Okay, I come here to cover this event because I want to hear and share these stories. I brought my camera, I bought my pen, my pad, my videos. Okay, I want to hear more of those stories because I would have never really known what happened to these communities. Okay, especially Oakland, the west side of Oakland, how they ran these federal systems, I-80, Highway 24, 880. What's the other one? 580, I believe that is. All those federal highways that goes through Oakland beeline to one place, San Francisco. And they did it by way of the Black community, okay? They tore up homes, they tore up businesses, people had to relocate, okay? And this happened across America. The 1957 Highway Act, that's what I learned. And then I also learned about this other community in between Oakland and Hayward, Russell City.
Yep.
About 1,400 people lived there, mostly Black folks, but it was BPIC, Black Indigenous People of Color. Okay, wiped them out. The Hayward City Council moved them out of there. Okay, and these people came in from San Francisco because they was relocated there from urban renewal, and that's where they set up shop from. No longer there. Okay, racism in California. That's why we should be sharing these stories here, Sacramento, because there's more stories. I'm all up in Coloma right now, dealing with Coloma. Gold rush. Okay, let me tell you, I go on about that, about the Black families up there that was relocated to or capped out, white capped out there. And what I mean by white cap, violence was used to remove these Black people up out of there. Okay, some of them had found gold up there, bought property, removed. Okay, what I've learned up there, James Marshall might have been responsible for the gold rush revolution, but he did not discover gold up there. You think these indigenous people didn't know that it was gold on their land for the last 10, 20,000 years? Well, I do think so from my research. I can't prove it, but that's what I'm trying to do, okay? I also suspect that there's a lot of Klansmen living up in those hills too. A lot of them probably been removed, but they were there, all the way down to Folsom. This is what I'm learning through these reparation activities, but I need Sacramento to show up. I know I'm going on long. I wasn't expecting to say much. I'm about to leave and, take part in the play down here in Midtown, but I do need Sacramento to show up because Chris, Kim Mims, Amoya, Glass here, they've been working their tail off to present these things to you, but they're giving more response from other areas than they are in their own hometown. And I love you, Sacramento, okay? I don't care what color you are, Black, white, Asian, Jewish, Muslim, I don't care. I love you. But come show up, especially the Black community. Come show up and share these stories. I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Real quick. I know I don't want to embarrass Ms. Kelly Rivas, but if you don't mind saying a word or two, please introduce yourself real quick because we appreciate you coming. You didn't have to come out, but we appreciate you.
Showing up, Kelly.
For sure. Thank you. Kelly Fong Rivas. For those that don't know me, I'm the senior advisor, racial equity advisor for Mayor Steinberg right here in Sacramento. I was our chief of staff for the last 5 years or so and just pivoted in May to take on this role for this very reason. I just really want to say thank you for everything that y'all have been out here and doing and putting forward, and Tony exactly just emphasizing that. Just seeing, it's exciting to see how many people are engaged in these stories that are coming forward, but we need so much more if we're going to get this done. You heard about the importance of what happens after this plan comes through from the statewide task force. It's then about advocacy, it's then about lobbying, and we are right here in the seat of where it all happens in the Capitol. And so I'm here as a resource for community, to be an accountability point, transparent accountability point for our city, because we are going to start really trying to do what can be a local or a municipal reparations effort as well. So that's something that I want to make sure is on everyone's radar so that we can amplify this good work that the task force is doing, that our anchor organizations are doing, so that Sacramento is ready and prepared for what happens when that plan comes out, for what happens when we really need to go advocate and lobby at the state capitol, and what we can do as a city too to repair the harms that the city has done. You've heard about a lot of things at the national level. You've heard about things that are going to be happening at the state level, but it's also things that happen at the local level municipally. And we know that there's a lot that's gone on. So there's research underway for that too. Would love to share more about it as we get going. I'm just about a month or so into this new role, so trying to figure out ways that I can really create that and make it more accessible for folks too. And I'll be working with Chris and I'm in the mass media group as well for a lot of that. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for the time. I don't want to take up too much more or center myself in the space. But as a background, as a community organizer, definitely want to find ways to be helpful in getting more folks out for these. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was dope.
All right, we're gonna kind of wrap it up here in about another 10 minutes, but I don't want to have to put the microphone in the people's faces, but I might have to do that because I didn't want to sit up here and talk for the past 15 minutes. You know, Kim and I and Chris, when we're out here, we like to really hear from the people. I mean, this is really for you. Now, if you don't want to say something, that's okay. You don't have to. But I heard my brother up here saying where he was from. And, you know, we really like to, you know, appreciate, you know, what you guys are doing. We really want to hear from you guys. You know,
let me say
you guys came here for a purpose. This isn't just about us. Like, seriously, when we go out and do stuff and we say that we are community media based, we are really for the community and we're just not talking. We just are actually about it. So, brother, if you don't mind, if not trying to put you on the spot too much, brother, but you mentioned where you from. Do you mind if you kind of mention where you from and how you got it from?
Because I understand reparation, the whole little thing. Like I said, I'm from Southern Louisiana. I track people back to like the 1840s and 30s and stuff like that, like from the slave plantations and everything. So I'm with the whole little thing. It's old. It needs to be paid. That's pretty much I gotta say. Like, as far as Sacramento go, I'm still learning the city and everything. I don't know that much about it, but I'm here. I'm here for support. Like I say, I'm from Louisiana. Like, yeah.
What part?
From Baton Rouge.
Okay.
Yeah. So my people like that I tracked back from St. Francisville. That's close by the Angola prison. So you can pretty much that's like the biggest plantation in Louisiana, the biggest one. Like, and the area is like 9 of them. So I tracked them back to one of them. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's bad and it's still bad. That's really the reason why I moved from Louisiana, because of the marijuana charge. I pretty much spent like 3 years in jail for like, not even a half ounce.
I mean,
Yeah,
we need to be thinking about these things. Need to be thinking about, I mean, what can be done retroactively for people who spent so much time incarcerated for illegal plant that's legal now. And like you said, lots of people are making money from it and it ain't us.
It bears seeds like a fruit or a plant or anything else.
Right.
I understand how it could be a drug when it bears seeds.
So you just left Louisiana recently?
I've been here going on 3 years now.
Okay.
I have a son here, so I really came back for my son.
All right.
But for the most part, yeah, I'm going to Louisiana. I live some parts of Southern California, like in LA and Compton, and like around when I came out here, what it was, 86. So my people, they moved from Louisiana for work, for you know, better higher paying jobs and everything.
In what year?
They moved in the early, I would say the 70s. I came out 86, 87, something like that. So like I said, they moved opportunities. Most of my family, like on my dad's side and mom's side, left Louisiana to come to California to really build up California. Let me put it to you like that. They helped build it up. Like everywhere else. Like, I mean, it's a track record. Everywhere we go, we build.
Yeah.
And during then, they didn't get paid for it. So
right.
It's a bill that's owed.
Show is.
So we coming with an invoice.
All right. Well,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right,
And I
young
wanna say
lady,
too-
we did mention you a little earlier, and you're actually an intern here at Cap City? Is that correct? Okay. So, young lady, do you mind saying your name, please, for the audience, and how you came about or understanding reparations yourself?
My name is Yashar Yisrael. My mom is from Mobile, Alabama, and my father is from Pittsburgh, Mississippi, and then he also lived in Jackson. And so they came here, man, like way before I was born, so long ago. And they came here to escape some of that racial terror that they were experiencing there, and just to find better opportunity here. And then they had me, and I'm now here. And so I think it's just really important. Just in my lifetime, I've experienced gentrification. I used to live in San Jose, California, and we had to move. We were pushed out just all of a sudden. And it was a really impactful thing that happened to me in my life. And so I think that's really important to address gentrification and lack of housing and housing problems that Black people face. And then also just me being a student, I spent a lot of my high school years fighting for educational justice. And I worked a lot with my peers in helping to remove SROs, student resource officers, from Sacramento County schools. And so I know firsthand just the extreme abuse and neglect that Black students have faced in Sacramento, because I went to school here. And just the lack of education that they've experienced. And a lot of my peers have been left behind because of that. And so I do think it's really important to focus on educational justice and resources for youth and just all of that good stuff. And I'm really thankful to be here today and hear these conversations. It's super important, and I love to get more involved and just keep educating myself and hearing your stories. And yeah, I'm also writing a story on this event today, so I would love to hear from more of you. Yeah, I would love to hear from more of you, and maybe get a few interviews and include your part in there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, ma'am. Please.
Come on.
Got one more in the building.
More microphones than people, more cameras. I'm originally from, well, my name is Lasaya, so it rhymes with Messiah. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I moved out here in 1992 to take care of a terminally ill brother. I'm from a family of 10. I was working in law enforcement. I was a Washington, D.C. police officer when I moved out here 30 years ago. Went to work with Stockton. Not a great experience. I ended up having to file a discrimination complaint there just to get hired. Moved on from there, went back to work in social work for a bit, and worked with Los Rios Community College District Police for a while. I now work with the Department of Public Health. I lost my mom in 2020. So prior to that, I played women's professional football. And after I lost my mom, I decided to go back and play again for a year. And that was last year until I, of course, broke my ribs. But in answering some of the questions and some of the things I've gone through with discrimination in law enforcement, that was one of the reasons I got out of law enforcement, because some of the things that I saw, going on, and some of the not so good working relationships I had with my peers. So again, that translates to the community. So it's not just the community, it's also in law enforcement when you're a minority, a woman, a Black woman, so forth, and you're assertive. In terms of reparations, I'm still learning a lot about it. What I would like to see repaired is everything that was taken from us, in terms of even being able to go into Starbucks without being arrested, walk down the street, find financial support. The biggest thing for me is land, acquiring some of that land back that was stolen from the natives, and some of the land that, the Highway Act kicked us off of, and those type of things. So my overall view is everything that was taken, I'd like to see repaired back. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but that's a vision. I don't know what the goals are or how to get there, but I would like to see that. Equality for all races, ethnicities, lifestyles. Those are some of the things I think about. So I'm not originally from Sacramento, but I've spent a lot of time in the Heights and in Oak Park, just kind of hanging out. So I came here today, it's because I don't currently have a business, but I will be starting a business for estate cleaning. So what happens, if someone wants to clean out their apartment, clean out their homes, if someone passed and you want to sell the goods. So it's going to be like liquidation. I don't see anybody in our community that really has that. So that's something I wanted to think about starting in September.
And what type of resources do you think would you need for your business that you're thinking of starting?
I think I really need to get to know some people who have had that type of business or more education, what it's going to take to run that business in order for it to thrive and stay in the community as opposed to disappearing after a couple of years. And then hopefully, my daughter-in-law could help out with that as well.
Okay, so some business resource mentors that would be available to help
Yes.
kind of walk you through it.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank
So
you.
that's what I'm looking for.
Super dope.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And Chris, we definitely want to wrap up with you. But before we do
Okay.
that, brother,
What's up?
I got to give a shout out to our two wonderful,
Come
lovely
on.
ladies
Come
here.
on. Talk about them.
All right. I'm going to see if I can come here. All right, ma'am. Can you
You
say
got no
your name,
slack here.
please? And you're a member of what organization up down the Bay Area? And by the way, this young lady here did a great job in Vallejo. We went, was it last week? I think we had
Last
community
Saturday.
session
Was it just last week?
Oh, was it last
Yep.
Saturday? Man, time is
Yep.
flying. Okay. All right, Miss Carol, could you please say who you are and what organization you're with and just how you came about reparations real quick. 1 minute, please, 1 minute. Because Carol, she can talk forever, but it's all good.
Hello, thank you so much for that word of introduction. I appreciate you, Brother Umoya. My name is Carol Tolliver, and I'm a member of CJEC and ARC Bay Area. And one thing I really want to reflect on is we can even start being more mindful. This is our time. We don't have to be afraid of repercussions. Well, maybe we do, but we have a mission. This is our time. Brother Tamaki talked about how many times reparations was brought up before the government. 30 years, okay? And they said no. So then Ms. Brown, she took over the mantle. Cheryl Lee Brown took over the mantle. And finally, our governor was wise enough and astute enough to say yes and start this commission. So I really do want to stress the importance of impacting our community. All of you here, share it with your family, your friends. We really want people to be educated and knowledgeable that this is actually happening. And this time is for us. So we need to be about our business of saying, this is what we want, this is what we need, this is what is owed to us, so let's go. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Fire as usual. Thank you, Carol.
Yes, hi, my name is Darlene Crumity. I am a member of CJEC and also ARC Bay Area. Just quickly, I would say a year and a half ago, I walked into this exact room, met Chris, Kim, and Umoya, and I have been following them ever since. And I want to echo what the brother said is that, we need y'all to come out. I mean, if I can come from Fairfield anywhere in the Bay Area or down to LA, if you live in Sacramento, I need you to come out. That is just what I wanted to say. And also I want to say how important it is to get these stories out. Take the survey. Talk about how you came here, because it's sad that my grandmother migrated during the first wave in 1918, where her children are all gone, and the two that have left, my mother and one other, they don't remember. So now I'm the senior, and we don't know why. We can only guess what brought my grandmother out here. So it's just important to get those stories out. Thank you.
And on Darlene.
All right, sir, it's on you.
Yeah, so and as Darlene mentioned a survey. Okay, and so we're going to wrap up here, but just quickly, if you want to speak to the California Reparations Task Force, after we're done here today, there is a survey that you can take that is actually on our website. If you go to our website, cjecofficial.org, you wait 2 seconds. What will pop up for you is a link to a survey that the California Reparations Task Force is accepting responses for. The survey is actually going to stop accepting responses probably the middle of next week. I believe it's August 31st, so next Wednesday. So please do take the survey if and when you can over the next few days, before Wednesday for sure. And also, there is a link on our website to a place where you can submit and upload and share your stories directly to the Reparations Task Force through the UCLA. Also use those links to share your story with the California Reparations Task Force through Wednesday, but that's not the end either, because you can talk directly to the task force at the next task force hearings. I believe Don mentioned a date for the task force hearings. He said a date that I wasn't prepared to say yet, so that is September 23rd and September 24th. All right, so I will say that now publicly. And come to the hearings virtually or in person, give public comment, but you can also email the task force directly. And of course, as I mentioned, we have our own newsletter as well at CJECofficial.org. Just scroll down on that first page, put your information in there, and sign up on the form. We're going to be out in the community doing a bunch of community canvassing, sharing information about California reparations throughout the rest of the summer, into the fall and winter, and every day and any day that we can going forward too. So make sure you connect with us here in Sacramento with our ARCC team to join us out there as we raise awareness about California reparations. One thing I've learned as an organizer is a lot of times, most of the time really, you got to go to where the people are. You actually got to go to where the people are. And so I'm looking forward to continuing our work, canvassing in community at events. We'll probably be back out next weekend. Also, I know there's a bunch of events going on here in Sacramento. There's the Meadowview Festival. There's the festival that the Sacramento NAACP is putting on. There is a bunch of great festivals that's going on here in the city of Sacramento. But there's also our neighborhoods. Right? We are in what used to be a bigger Black neighborhood now, but has been less and less Black over the past several years here in the city of Sacramento, which is Oak Park. So part of what we're going to continue doing is also being out in our community and continuing to do community listening sessions like this in and around Sacramento. Hopefully we'll be up in North Sacramento at some point over the next few months too. So I'm talking fast. I'm trying to get you out of here. I appreciate your time on a Saturday, and you stayed overtime actually, so I appreciate you. And I want to say thank you. I'm going to go back to who? Kim? Don? Okay. I think they want me to go back to Don Tamaki for... so Don, do you have any final words for the folks out here?
I don't. Just got to keep on keeping on, and thank you so much for having me. And we are listening. So if there are suggestions that come out of this meeting thereafter, please forward them to the task force.
Right on. Thank you, Don. Okay, and I want to thank you again for joining us here for our third community listening session of the week. I appreciate the ETM Media team for broadcasting live on YouTube. Shout out to the YouTube family. Shout out to everybody for coming out. Big shout out to Kelly Rivas, also from the city of Sacramento. Big love. Appreciate you as well. Thank you. Right on, right on. Yes, you deserve it. Definitely. Appreciate you. But I also want to appreciate each and every single one of you who's here and who's shared and who's talked about their ideas. Think about what we've been saying. Share with your neighbors, with your family members. I sometimes say in the newsletters, put reparations in your conversations. So the more you can say the word reparations, the more people know about reparations, and the more likely it is we get reparations. All right. So having said that, I'm gonna close us out here. I actually have one more event to go to today. I'm gonna go talk to some kids about reparations later on today at the Sacramento Wellness Fair, the Youth Wellness Fair. So I will be down there. If you are in the Florin Road area, I think it's 3236 Florin Road. If I'm not mistaken, check us out on cjecofficial.org for the details on that too. But again, thank you, appreciate you. And with that, Kim, if there's nothing else, if there's nothing else, I will wish you a great afternoon, a great day, and see you next time. Thank you.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.